Charlotte is quickly moving up into one of my favorite series of summer 2015. This episode met my expectations from what the last episode gave me, and it surpassed him by a large margin, because with this week's episode, we get a different perspective of the series. I mean, it was hinted at in the first episode, but with this episode, we get a darker tone to the series, and usually when it comes to the staff that works on these type of series, usually the series does have a darker side to them, and we get to see that with this week's episode of Charlotte. And I have to say, the way the tone shifts were, from the comedy moments to the slice of life moments to the very serious and dark moments, the tone shifts were on point. I don't really have nothing to complain about, and those are the one things that's really hard for a studio to really nail down. It comes down to tone shifts and how it's handled, from going from a setting that feels very happy or funny to a setting that's very depressing. Because if you look at this episode, the first part of the episode was kind of comedy, funny, and, some slice of life going on with some little bit of world building. And then in the second half, it went into like a serious mode with what we found out about Nowell's brother, what happened to him in the past. And so the episode, in terms of execution, definitely a lot better than even the first episode. I love the first episode a lot, but this episode, I like the direction it took, because this series is not going to be nothing but just happy-go-lucky events. It's not going to be just that. It's going to have a darker atmosphere to it. And the way this episode was done, it makes you assume that something like this, like what was showcased that happened in the past with Nowell's, brother, you can assume that something like this is going to happen in the series. For instance, maybe our MCU is going to be captured and then experimented on, because we get to see how this was foreshadowed multiple times throughout this episode. And the entire point of this school and the student council is to stop it from other people with these powers from being used as guinea pigs. And that's what we come to find out. Now it makes a lot more sense of why, our characters from last week's episode were trying to get used so bad into the school, because if you would have one day used his powers at the wrong time, and someone that was around that shouldn't have been watching him, for instance, the right person was watching him, he would have been fucked, and he would have been a guinea pig that would have been experimented on, and he would be in an insane asylum for the rest of his life after, he got found by the wrong person. And so that's what was kind of built up with this episode that I like quite a bit, because the series is not going to be just happy, and I like that quite a bit, because you have this presence of darkness behind the characters, because they got to watch what they do, because if they use their abilities at the wrong time around the wrong people, they're going to get captured and experimented on. Because just because they're in this school, for instance, let's point this out. Just because these students are in the school doesn't mean there's going to be people that don't want these students as guinea pigs, because that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's human nature to be curious and want to discover things and experiment and just to see how things work. That is kind of human nature in a sense. And so it makes a lot of sense when you think about if a scientist, like someone that's very, like, a lot into science, like he studied a lot, and when he saw this random person with a power, and he was part of, let's say, some form of corrupt organization, of course he would try to grab this person and drag him to the organization, experiment on this person. That's what can most likely happen. Just because these students are in the school doesn't mean they're safe. They can still most likely be captured by the wrong people. And I like that. Like I said, I like the dark presence in this series, because it's not just happy sunshine and rainbows to it. Now, what does this episode do for the most part? So, we get the concept of what the series is about. That's the main thing. It's not just about the reforming of you as a character, for instance, him turning into a good guy and learning to use his powers not in a bad sense, but in a responsible sense. It's not just about that, which shocks me, because I expected the series to be focusing around our MC and him trying to become a better person and help out the school life in the school. Come to find out, there's a lot more meaning to this series that was previously let on, and it's about the student council hunting down different people around, the world or in Japan, and trying to help them out before they get captured and bring them to the school. And so Yu is a part of this to where he's helping them out, but he's getting paid at the exact same time to help the student council out. So far the premise of Charlotte is really exceeding my expectations, because I didn't expect a plot like this. I didn't. I expected a plot that was going to be centered around school life, which it still is in a certain sense, but it's not just focused entirely on that. It has it to where students are having to go outside of school and find people, hunt them down, do detective work, what type of ability they have, for they can bring this person to school before something very bad happens. Now, getting into now our, main female character of the series, very sad and tragic shit we got this week. Like, I don't necessarily feel bad for the brother. Like, I mean, I feel bad, but I can't, let's say, cry or anything about that, because I didn't know his character long enough. But it is sad, because, I mean, if you're in that situation, and you had this brother that you grew up with, and then all of a sudden had this power, he got captured by these crazy scientists and experimented on him, you saw your brother 1 year later, and he was broken beyond repair and couldn't even recognize you, I think you would be mentally distraught. And that's probably what's going on with now. Like, she seems like she doesn't want to make any friends or anything, because she doesn't trust anybody. Because in the past, when she was put into that school where her brother is being, tormented, you had it to where the scientists set up friends around her for they can get close to her and, kind of detach her away from her brother. And so that's why she doesn't really want to make friends, and why she stays away from so many people in the series. It makes a lot more sense now when you think about it. So yeah, I mean, Charlotte Episode 2, very good. I can see now why there was so much hype behind this series now, because I know there were so many Chibits letting me know I need to fucking review this, because it was so hyped, and there's so many people telling me to watch this, and I'm glad I am, because it's a very good series, and I'm liking it a lot. It's definitely in my top 5 favorite series of this season. Yeah, enough said on that. We'll have to see how it goes, though, where it goes with the plot, to the dark elements, to the characters. We'll just have to see how it goes. Tell me your thoughts and comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.